You study history and you look at those countries that were most free and most prosperous, and I believe you will agree with me that they had two things in common: private property ownership and gun ownership.
Yeah.
Those two things are as essential to freedom as air and water are to life.
That's right.
Private property ownership and gun ownership. When the government owns property and it owns the means of production, you are an enslaved people. My whole high school career, I remember as a child believing that the United States of America competed with Russia in every way. We raced to the moon, we raced in the Olympics, we competed in every way. That was a country that took and took and took from its people. And when you take from man, he quits working. That nation was wealthy in natural resources, but as government took and took, there was famine in the land and the country crumbled because the people didn't get to keep what they're working for. You either keep the product of your labor, you either own your property, or there is no freedom.
That's right.
So it becomes abundantly clear then that all of the argument that we've been having in Austin for the last 6 or 8 years over how to fix the appraisal process in the state of Texas is really just a diversionary tactic to keep the slaves busy.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
If you want to restore freedom, if you want to ensure prosperity in the great state of Texas, and you get rid of property taxes not because it's a fiscal thing, but because it's a freedom thing.
Yes.
When we understand that, and we better understand it, because we're going to get rid of property tax in the next legislative session in Texas. But if we don't get that it is a freedom thing, those taxes are going to be hanging around your kid's neck in a couple of years because they're going to open them back up and they're going to bring them back. You better say private property ownership and gun ownership are essential elements of freedom. I will not compromise. You cannot have my property. I don't care how many potholes I have to drive over. I don't care how bad you think you need another sheriff's department deputy. I don't care how bad you think the school building needs another wing. You cannot have my freedom.
That's right.
The beautiful thing about freedom is freedom and prosperity walk hand in hand. They walk hand in hand. You look at history. Those countries that were free were prosperous. We've got a great study put out by the Texas Public Policy Foundation April of last year. That foundation is a nonpartisan think tank, if you will, in Austin, looks at issues affecting Texas, and it has long advocated the elimination of property tax in our state. Nobody few in the legislature have taken it up. The argument has been, but how are we going to pay for the potholes and the sheriff's deputies and the school buildings, and we can't do it. How are we going to do it? So the Public Policy commissioned a study to look at the Texas economy. That study, I think, does a very good job of analogizing economics, and from the questions that were asked earlier, some of you in here are ex-students of economics. You understand economy. But many in our state do not, and that study does a good job of analogizing the economy to a mule and taxes to a burden on the back of that mule. No matter what kind of tax it is a burden on the back of that mule. You produce less than you would without a pack on your back.
That's right.
You put a pack on the back of that mule, whether that pack is a property tax, or that pack is an income tax, or that pack is a sales tax, that mule cannot produce as much. So the goal of government policy has got to be, how do I load the burden on the back can plow as many rows of field as possible. How do we load the pack on that mule? And that study says the property tax and the income tax about the poorest loaded pack you could possibly put on the back of the mule. You might as well stack it all on his front left shoulder and he can't pick up a leg, much less plow the field. You want that mule to plow all day long, from sunup to sundown and then some. You spread the weight of that burden evenly across his back, as a sales tax spreads the burden of the tax across the whole economy. And that mule will go to town every day.